This book was generated using Speakter's AI voices. You can create human-like voiceovers in over 50 languages.
The scorching sun beat down on the dusty road, its relentless rays turning the air into a shimmering haze. D'Artagnan's old yellow horse plodded along, its coat gleaming like tarnished gold in the harsh light. The young Gascon's heart raced with anticipation, each hoofbeat bringing him closer to his destiny in Paris. In his pocket, D'Artagnan felt the reassuring weight of his father's letter of recommendation to Monsieur de Tréville, captain of the Musketeers. The parchment crinkled softly with each movement, a constant reminder of the legacy he carried. At his side hung his father's sword, its familiar weight both a comfort and a challenge. As the town of Meung came into view, a tingling excitement coursed through D'Artagnan's veins. The bustling streets and lively taverns were a stark contrast to his quiet Gascon village. The air was thick with the scent of fresh bread and the pungent aroma of horses, mingling with the earthy smell of dust and sweat. Suddenly, a tall, mysterious figure caught D'Artagnan's eye. The stranger's lips curled into a mocking smile as he eyed the yellow horse. "My, what a fine steed for a would-be musketeer," he sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. D'Artagnan's blood boiled, his Gascon pride flaring like a struck match. His fingers tightened on the reins, knuckles turning white. "You dare mock me, sir?" he cried, leaping from his horse with the agility of a cat. "I challenge you to a duel." But before D'Artagnan could draw his sword, a sharp pain exploded at the base of his skull. The world spun, colors blurring into a dizzying whirl. As darkness claimed him, he caught a glimpse of the stranger's companions, their faces twisted in cruel amusement. When D'Artagnan finally clawed his way back to consciousness, the world came into focus slowly, like a painting emerging from fog. His head throbbed, each pulse sending waves of nausea through his body. As he patted his pockets, a cold dread washed over him. The letter, his precious letter of recommendation, was gone. For a moment, despair threatened to overwhelm him. But D'Artagnan was not one to be easily deterred. His jaw set with determination, eyes blazing with renewed purpose. This setback would not be the end of his journey, but merely the beginning of a greater adventure. The road to Paris stretched before him like a ribbon of destiny. With each hoofbeat of his faithful horse, D'Artagnan's resolve grew stronger. He would find the man from Meung, reclaim his letter, and prove himself worthy of the Musketeers. As Paris rose on the horizon, D'Artagnan's breath caught in his throat. Its towering spires and grand buildings dwarfed anything he had ever seen. The city's energy was palpable, a living, breathing entity that seemed to pulse with possibility. The cacophony of voices, the clatter of carriage wheels on cobblestones, and the distant tolling of church bells created a symphony of urban life. Making his way through the labyrinthine streets, D'Artagnan finally arrived at the residence of Monsieur de Tréville. His heart hammered in his chest as he was ushered into the presence of the legendary captain. The room smelled of leather and polished wood, a scent that spoke of power and tradition. Tréville's piercing gaze seemed to look right through the young Gascon. D'Artagnan straightened his spine, channeling every ounce of courage he possessed. Though he lacked the stolen letter, his words flowed with passion and conviction. He spoke of honor, of duty, of his burning desire to serve the king. To D'Artagnan's surprise and delight, a glimmer of approval shone in Tréville's eyes. The captain was clearly impressed by the young man's Gascon spirit and boldness. Yet without proper credentials, Tréville's hands were tied. He could not offer an immediate position in the Musketeers. As D'Artagnan left Tréville's residence, a whirlwind of emotions battled within him. Disappointment warred with hope, frustration with determination. The streets of Paris suddenly felt both vast and confining, a maze of possibilities and dead ends. Then, like a bolt from the blue, D'Artagnan's eyes locked onto a familiar figure. There, weaving through the crowd, was the man from Meung, the thief who had stolen his letter, and with it, his easy path to glory. Without a second thought, D'Artagnan plunged into the sea of bodies. His feet flew over the cobblestones, his heart pounding a furious rhythm. The chase was on, a wild pursuit through the crowded Parisian streets. With each turn and twist, D'Artagnan felt the hand of fate guiding him. As he rounded a corner, his quarry just steps ahead, D'Artagnan's foot caught on an uneven cobblestone. He stumbled, arms windmilling wildly as he fought to keep his balance. In that split second, he collided with a group of gentlemen engaged in animated conversation. The impact sent them sprawling, a tangle of limbs and indignant cries. D'Artagnan scrambled to his feet, his eyes desperately searching for the man from Meung. But the thief had vanished, swallowed up by the bustling Parisian crowd. Panting heavily, D'Artagnan turned to face the men he had bowled over. Their faces were flushed with anger, hands moving to the hilts of their swords. With a sinking feeling, D'Artagnan realized his impetuous chase had led him into a new and potentially dangerous situation. As the men advanced, their eyes glinting with menace, D'Artagnan knew his adventure in Paris was about to take an unexpected and perilous turn. D'Artagnan's impetuous pursuit of the man from Meung set off a chain of events. His haste through the streets of Paris led to a series of comical and potentially dangerous misunderstandings. The cobblestones echoed with the thunderous rhythm of D'Artagnan's boots as he tore through the winding alleys of Paris. His heart pounded in his chest, matching the frantic pace of his feet. The thrill of the chase consumed him, blinding him to the world around him. The air was thick with the scent of freshly baked bread and the less pleasant odors of the city, but D'Artagnan noticed none of it. In his single-minded focus, the young Gascon failed to see the three distinguished figures he was about to encounter. Each collision would set in motion a series of events that would change the course of his life forever. First came Athos, a man of quiet dignity. D'Artagnan, in his rush, slammed into him with the force of a charging bull. The impact sent a jolt of pain through Athos's injured shoulder, his face contorting in a grimace. "Pardon, monsieur," D'Artagnan muttered distractedly, already moving on. Athos's eyes narrowed, his pride wounded more than his body. The sting of the discourtesy lingered in the air like a bitter aftertaste. Next was Porthos, resplendent in his blue and gold uniform. D'Artagnan, still oblivious to his surroundings, caught his foot in Porthos's ornate cape, nearly tearing it from his shoulders. The fabric strained and groaned under the sudden tension. The vain Musketeer's face flushed red with indignation, his carefully cultivated image shattered in an instant. "Watch where you're going, boy," he bellowed, but D'Artagnan was already gone, leaving behind a wake of ruffled feathers and wounded pride. Finally, there was Aramis, deep in conversation with a lady friend. Their heads were bent close, voices low and intimate. D'Artagnan, in his haste, stumbled between them like a bull in a china shop. Their romantic reverie shattered like fine crystal, the moment lost forever. Aramis's eyes flashed with annoyance, his carefully crafted words of seduction dying on his lips. 3 offended musketeers, 3 challenges issued. The air crackled with tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. D'Artagnan found himself committed to 3 duels, each set for a different hour of the same day. It was as if fate had conspired to test his mettle all at once, throwing him into the deep end of Parisian society without so much as a warning. As the sun climbed to its zenith, painting the city in shades of gold, D'Artagnan made his way to the Luxembourg. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword, fingers twitching with nervous energy. His mind raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was his chance to prove himself, to show he belonged in this world of honor and steel. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Just as D'Artagnan and Athos faced each other, ready to cross swords, a commotion erupted nearby, the air filled with shouts and the clatter of boots on stone. A group of Cardinal Richelieu's guards, their red cloaks billowing like bloodstains, burst onto the scene. Their eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of catching musketeers in the act of illegal dueling. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. The world narrowed to a pinpoint, all sound fading away except for the thunderous beating of D'Artagnan's heart. He stood at a crossroads, his future hanging in the balance. He could step aside, let the guards do their duty, and avoid trouble. Or he could stand with the musketeers, men he had only just met, against the Cardinal's men. His decision was made in the blink of an eye, as natural as drawing breath. D'Artagnan's sword sang as it left its scabbard, the sound cutting through the tension like a knife. He took his place beside Athos, feeling a surge of righteous anger course through his veins. The young Gascon's eyes blazed with determination, a grin spreading across his face. "Shall we dance, gentlemen?" he called out, his voice ringing with bravado. What followed was a whirlwind of flashing steel and flying sparks. D'Artagnan moved like quicksilver, his blade finding gaps in the guards' defenses with uncanny precision. Each clash of steel sent vibrations up his arm, the impact jarring yet exhilarating. Athos fought with the grace of a seasoned warrior, each movement economical and deadly. Soon, Porthos and Aramis joined the fray, their earlier grievances forgotten in the heat of battle. The clash of swords drew a crowd, the spectators gasping and cheering as the outnumbered foursome held their ground. The air filled with the metallic tang of blood and sweat, the grunts of exertion, and the cries of the wounded. The narrow alley echoed with the din of combat, transforming the peaceful afternoon into a chaotic battlefield. As if summoned by some unspoken call, more musketeers appeared, their blue cloaks swirling like ocean waves as they joined the fight. The skirmish swelled into a full-blown street battle, the once quiet square now a seething mass of flashing blades and flying fists. In the midst of the chaos, D'Artagnan found himself fighting back-to-back with Athos. The older man's eyes met his, a flicker of respect passing between them. Porthos's booming laugh rang out like thunder as he sent two guards sprawling with a single sweep of his massive arm. Aramis moved with deadly grace, his blade finding its mark with surgical precision. The tide turned. The Cardinal's guards, overwhelmed and outmatched, began to retreat. Their red cloaks disappeared into the winding streets of Paris like a receding crimson tide, leaving behind a scene of triumph and camaraderie. As the dust settled, the four men stood together, chests heaving, clothes torn and bloodied. But their eyes shone with the light of victory and newfound friendship. Athos, Porthos, and Aramis looked at D'Artagnan with newfound respect, their earlier grievances forgotten in light of his courage and loyalty. "Well fought, young man," Athos said, clasping D'Artagnan's shoulder. His voice was gruff but warm, like a father proud of his son. "It seems we misjudged you." Porthos grinned broadly, his teeth flashing in the sunlight. "Any man who fights like that is a friend of mine," he boomed, slapping D'Artagnan on the back with enough force to stagger him. Aramis nodded, a wry smile on his face. "It appears our duels are no longer necessary. Shall we drink instead?" he suggested, his eyes twinkling with mischief. And so, as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the four men made their way to a nearby tavern. The streets of Paris seemed different now, filled with possibility and adventure. They raised their glasses in a toast, wine flowing as freely as their laughter. Stories were shared, boasts were made, and a bond was forged in the fires of battle and victory. D'Artagnan looked around at his new companions, a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the wine. He had come to Paris seeking adventure and glory. Instead, he had found something far more valuable: friendship. As the night wore on, the young Gascon knew that this was just the beginning of a grand adventure, one that would be shared with these three remarkable men. As the tavern's candles burned low and the night grew late, D'Artagnan bid farewell to his new friends. His head swam with wine and excitement as he made his way through the darkened streets, searching for a place to rest his head. Little did he know that his next decision would set in motion events that would change his life forever. For as he approached the home of Monsieur and Madame Bonacieux, seeking lodging for the night, fate was already weaving its intricate web around him, drawing him deeper into the heart of Paris and the adventures that awaited. D'Artagnan arrived in Paris, his heart brimming with a potent mixture of excitement and trepidation. He quickly found lodgings at the home of Monsieur and Madame Bonacieux, a decision that would soon alter the course of his life in ways he could never have imagined. The bustling streets of Paris enveloped the young Gascon, a cacophony of sights, sounds, and smells that both thrilled and overwhelmed him. Merchants hawked their wares, horses' hooves clattered on cobblestones, and the aroma of freshly baked bread mingled with less savory scents. It was a far cry from his quiet provincial life, and D'Artagnan felt his pulse quicken with each step. His world shifted on its axis the moment he first laid eyes on Constance Bonacieux. She was a vision of beauty, her eyes sparkling like stars on a clear night, her smile as warm and inviting as a summer's day. D'Artagnan felt his breath catch in his throat, his heart hammering against his ribs. In that instant, he knew he was lost. Constance's laughter was like music, her movements graceful and captivating. D'Artagnan found himself seeking out her company at every opportunity, drinking in her presence like a man dying of thirst. Even when she was absent, her memory lingered, a sweet perfume that clung to his thoughts. Little did D'Artagnan know that his love for Constance would soon plunge him into a world of intrigue and danger. For Constance was no ordinary woman. She was a confidant to Queen Anne of Austria herself. The Queen's chambers became a sanctuary of whispered secrets and hidden glances, a world away from the prying eyes of the court. At the royal court, tension crackled in the air like static before a storm. Cardinal Richelieu moved through the halls with predatory grace, his red robes billowing behind him like wings of blood. His piercing gaze seemed to strip away all pretense, leaving courtiers feeling exposed and vulnerable. The cardinal's ambition was a palpable force, filling the air with an oppressive weight that left even the bravest gasping for breath. Queen Anne, trapped in a loveless marriage with King Louis XIV, found solace in the arms of the Duke of Buckingham. Their stolen moments were like flames dancing in the wind, beautiful but dangerous. The Duke's passionate gaze set the Queen's heart aflutter, his touch igniting a fire that threatened to consume them both. Yet with each stolen kiss, each whispered endearment, they risked not just their own lives, but the future of France itself. D'Artagnan's world collided with these lofty affairs one fateful evening. Constance approached him, her eyes wide with worry, her voice trembling with urgency. "D'Artagnan," she whispered, her fingers digging into his arm, "the Queen needs your help. Will you answer her call?" The weight of the moment pressed down on D'Artagnan like a physical force. His heart raced, blood pounding in his ears. He nodded, knowing that his decision would thrust him into a world far more perilous than any he had known before. As he navigated the treacherous waters of court politics, D'Artagnan felt as though he were walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. His love for Constance burned bright, a beacon guiding him through the darkness of deceit that surrounded him. Yet his duty to the crown pulled at him with equal force, a tether binding him to a cause greater than himself. One evening, as shadows lengthened across the palace grounds like grasping fingers, D'Artagnan's keen ears caught the hushed tones of a clandestine conversation. The cardinal's voice, low and menacing, mingled with the sultry whispers of a woman. Milady de Winter, the cardinal's most dangerous spy. Their words painted a picture of betrayal and danger that made D'Artagnan's blood run cold. A plot against the Queen. The revelation hit D'Artagnan like a physical blow, leaving him breathless and reeling. In that moment, he realized that the game he had unwittingly entered was far more deadly than he could have imagined. The stakes were not just his own heart, but the very future of France itself. With each passing day, D'Artagnan delved deeper into the murky depths of courtly intrigue. He moved through a world of masked intentions and veiled threats, where a misplaced word or a misinterpreted glance could spell doom. His wit became his shield, his courage his sword, as he fought to protect both his love and his country. The young Gascon found himself at the center of a storm, buffeted by winds of loyalty, love, and duty. Each step he took was a dance on the edge of a knife, with danger lurking in every shadow and every smile. As the web of secrets and lies tightened around him, D'Artagnan steeled himself for the challenges ahead, knowing that his loyalty, his skill, and his heart would be tested as never before. As night fell over Paris, casting long shadows across the palace grounds, D'Artagnan caught sight of Queen Anne hurrying through the corridors, her face a mask of worry and indecision. He watched as she paused, her hand clutching something tightly to her chest. In the flickering candlelight, he caught a glimpse of sparkling diamonds. The Queen's eyes darted around nervously before she disappeared into her chambers, leaving D'Artagnan with a sense of foreboding. What desperate act was the Queen about to commit, and how would it change the fate of them all? Queen Anne's heart raced as she made a fateful decision. In a moment of passionate indiscretion, she gifted her diamond studs to her lover, the Duke of Buckingham. The studs, a cherished present from King Louis XIII, now served as a token of her forbidden affection. The palace air grew thick with tension, heavy with the weight of secrets. Whispers seemed to echo off the ornate walls as news of this exchange reached the ever-vigilant Cardinal Richelieu. His eyes, cold and calculating, glinted with cunning as he formulated a plan. Like a spider weaving an intricate web, he carefully manipulated the threads of court intrigue. Richelieu approached the king, his voice as smooth as silk, hiding the poison beneath. "Your Majesty," he suggested, a false smile playing on his lips. "Wouldn't it be a splendid sight to see the queen adorned with those exquisite diamond studs at the upcoming royal ball?" King Louis XIII, oblivious to the cardinal's machinations, eagerly agreed. The trap snapped shut, and Queen Anne found herself caught in its merciless jaws. Panic gripped the queen's heart, squeezing the air from her lungs. The studs, now an ocean away, might as well have been on the moon. Her hands trembled as she paced her chambers, the soft swish of her skirts a stark contrast to the tumult in her mind. In her desperation, she turned to her trusted confidant, Constance Bonacieux. The two women huddled together by the fireplace, their whispers barely audible above the crackling flames. The dancing shadows on the walls seemed to mock their predicament. "What am I to do, Constance?" The queen's voice quivered, her usual composure crumbling. "If I cannot produce the studs, all will be lost. My honor, my position, everything." Constance's mind raced, searching for a solution. Suddenly, a name flashed in her thoughts like a beacon of hope. D'Artagnan, the young Gascon with his unwavering loyalty and daring spirit, might be their only chance. D'Artagnan's eyes widened as Constance relayed the queen's plight, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush. The weight of the situation settled on his shoulders like a heavy cloak, threatening to crush him. He knew that more than just the queen's honor hung in the balance. The very peace between France and England teetered on the edge of a knife. "I will retrieve the studs," D'Artagnan declared, his voice filled with determination. The fire in his eyes matched the intensity of his words. "But I cannot do this alone." In the dim light of a smoky tavern, D'Artagnan sought out his brothers in arms, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis. The four Musketeers, bound by friendship and honor, huddled around a worn wooden table. The air was thick with the scent of spilled wine and pipe smoke, mirroring the gravity of their conversation. Athos, ever the strategist, spread out a map of the route to England. His finger traced the path, leaving invisible marks on the parchment. "We'll need fresh horses at these points," he said, his voice low and intense. "And we must be prepared for the Cardinal's agents at every turn." Porthos, his broad shoulders tensed with anticipation, added, "We'll need weapons, and plenty of them." His hand instinctively moved to the hilt of his sword. Who knows what dangers we'll face? Aramis, usually the most light-hearted of the group, wore a somber expression. His eyes, normally twinkling with mischief, now held a steely resolve. "And we must guard against Milady de Winter. Her cunning is as sharp as any blade." As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, the four friends set out from Paris. The clatter of hooves on cobblestone gave way to the soft thud of earth as they left the city behind. The weight of their mission hung heavy in the air, each man acutely aware of the stakes. D'Artagnan's mind raced faster than his horse. The face of the queen, etched with worry, flashed before his eyes. He could almost hear the mocking laughter of Cardinal Richelieu should they fail. The young Gascon's grip tightened on the reins, his determination as unyielding as steel. As they rode, the landscape blurred around them, trees and fields melding into a tapestry of green and brown. The sun climbed higher in the sky, its heat beating down on their backs, but they pressed on relentlessly. Every moment was precious, every second bringing them closer to either triumph or disaster. The Musketeers knew that somewhere out there, Milady de Winter and the Cardinal's other agents were moving against them. Like shadows in the night, these adversaries would stop at nothing to see their mission fail. The thought sent a chill down D'Artagnan's spine, despite the warmth of the day. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the countryside, the four friends pushed their horses harder. The road ahead stretched endlessly before them, each mile a testament to their resolve. But as darkness fell, bringing with it the promise of hidden dangers, a sense of foreboding settled over the group. D'Artagnan glanced at his companions, their faces set with grim determination. They had barely begun their journey, and already the weight of their task pressed down upon them. As they rode into the gathering gloom, one question burned in their minds. What perils awaited them on the treacherous path to England? D'Artagnan and the three Musketeers embarked on their perilous journey to England. Their mission was fraught with danger, as Cardinal Richelieu's cunning agents had laid numerous traps along their path. The four companions rode out of Paris, leaving behind the familiar bustle of city life. An eerie silence enveloped them as they entered the dense forest, the air thick with tension and the scent of damp earth. Each man's breath came in short, controlled bursts, their eyes darting from shadow to shadow, anticipating danger at every turn. Suddenly, a twig snapped like a gunshot in the stillness. In an instant, the forest erupted into chaos. The Cardinal's men, hidden like coiled serpents, sprang their ambush with deadly precision. Steel rang against steel, the clash of blades echoing through the trees. Athos, his face a mask of grim determination, felled two attackers with lightning-fast strikes. But even his legendary skill couldn't save him from a lucky blow. He stumbled, his hand pressed to his side as crimson bloomed across his doublet. "Go!" Athos shouted, his voice strained but resolute. "The mission cannot fail!" D'Artagnan's heart clenched as he spurred his horse forward, leaving his friends behind. The weight of their trust pressed down on him like a physical burden, threatening to crush his spirit. The young Gascon's journey became a gauntlet of near misses and desperate escapes. Near Chantilly, the crack of a musket split the air. His horse screamed, a sound of pure agony that would haunt D'Artagnan's dreams for years to come. As he hit the ground, the beast's wide, terrified eyes seared themselves into his memory. Exhausted and on foot, D'Artagnan stumbled into an inn at Crevecoeur. The warmth inside was a stark contrast to the chill of danger that had dogged his steps. But even here, safety was an illusion. A man's eyes met his across the crowded room, a flash of recognition sparking between them. In a heartbeat, swords were drawn. D'Artagnan found himself locked in a deadly dance with one of the Cardinal's spies. Tables crashed and patrons screamed as the two men fought, their blades glinting in the flickering firelight. Drawing on every lesson learned from Athos, D'Artagnan parried and thrust with desperate energy. A lucky feint, a moment's opening, and his blade found its mark. The spy crumpled, and D'Artagnan fled into the night, his heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. As the towers of Calais loomed on the horizon, a new obstacle reared its head. Word reached him that Milady de Winter, the Cardinal's beautiful and deadly agent, had arrived ahead of him. With honeyed words and veiled threats, she had convinced the port authorities to bar all ships from sailing to England. D'Artagnan's mind raced, searching for a solution like a drowning man grasping for a lifeline. Then an idea struck him like a bolt of lightning. With a roguish grin that belied his inner turmoil, he approached a group of weathered fishermen. Spinning a tale of star-crossed lovers and clandestine meetings, he appealed to their romantic hearts and greedy purses in equal measure. Soon he found himself on a tiny fishing boat, tossed about on the choppy waters of the English Channel. The salt spray stung his eyes and the wind howled in his ears, but D'Artagnan's determination burned brighter than ever. England and the salvation of his mission lay just beyond the horizon. Dover's white cliffs rose before him like a beacon of hope. The moment his feet touched English soil, D'Artagnan was running. He pushed his body to its limits, each step bringing him closer to London and the Duke of Buckingham. The countryside blurred past him, a tapestry of green fields and quaint villages that he had no time to admire. At last, breathless and disheveled, he stood before the Duke's residence. But as he presented the case containing the Queen's gift, his heart sank like a stone. 2 of the 12 diamond studs were missing, no doubt pilfered by the cunning Milady. For a moment, despair threatened to overwhelm him. The Duke, however, proved to be a man of action and resources. Understanding the gravity of the situation, he summoned his personal jeweler. In a flurry of activity that seemed to bend the very laws of time, 2 perfect replicas were crafted. D'Artagnan watched in awe as skilled hands worked their magic, transforming raw materials into glittering perfection. With the complete set of studs safely in his possession, D'Artagnan began his frantic return journey to Paris. The weight of the precious cargo seemed to lend him wings, but the road ahead was far from clear. Another ambush by the Cardinal's persistent men left him battered but unbroken. The Channel crossing proved even more treacherous than before, with storm-tossed waves threatening to swallow his tiny vessel whole. Yet through it all, D'Artagnan's spirit remained unquenchable. With each obstacle overcome, his determination only grew stronger. The royal ball loomed ever closer, a deadline that spurred him on when his body cried out for rest. He rode as if the very hounds of hell were at his heels, knowing that the honor of the Queen, the fate of his friends, and perhaps the future of France itself hung in the balance. As D'Artagnan raced through the gates of Paris, the city a blur of lights and shadows, he allowed himself a moment of hope. The diamond studs were safely in his possession, and the ball was mere hours away. But as he rounded the corner to the palace, his blood ran cold. There, standing in the shadows with a triumphant smirk, was Cardinal Richelieu himself. Had he come so far, endured so much, only to fail at the final moment? The diamond studs had been successfully returned to the Queen, arriving just in time for the ball. D'Artagnan and the Musketeers, flushed with their recent triumph, found themselves plunging headlong into a whirlwind of plots and counterplots. Paris simmered with an undercurrent of tension, like a powder keg awaiting a spark. The air hung heavy with secrets and whispers, each breath laden with the promise of danger. In his opulent palace, Cardinal Richelieu paced like a caged lion, his face a mask of barely contained fury. The failure of his plan to expose the Queen had not only wounded his pride, but had ignited a fierce determination to crush those who dared oppose him. D'Artagnan, the young Gascon with fire in his veins and steel in his eyes, found himself thrust into the center of this dangerous game. His quick wit and unwavering courage made him an invaluable asset in the ongoing struggle against the Cardinal's machinations. The weight of responsibility pressed down on his shoulders, a constant reminder of the high stakes at play. Under the cover of darkness, D'Artagnan slipped through the shadowy streets of Paris. His heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of excitement and fear coursing through his body. The cobblestones echoed softly under his boots as he darted from shadow to shadow, intercepting messages carried by the Cardinal's couriers. His nimble fingers worked quickly, decoding the secrets hidden within. Each revelation was like a piece of a complex puzzle, slowly unveiling the Cardinal's sinister plans against the King's allies. The young musketeer found himself in a world where every whisper could be a threat, and every shadow could conceal a dagger. He infiltrated gatherings of conspirators, his keen ears straining to catch every murmured word, every hushed plan. The fate of France itself might hinge on the information he gathered, and the weight of that knowledge was almost suffocating. One moonlit night, D'Artagnan and his loyal friends found themselves embroiled in a mission of utmost secrecy. Lord Buckingham, the dashing English nobleman, had dared to enter Paris under the cover of darkness. The Cardinal's spies slithered through the city like venomous snakes, their eyes gleaming with malice as they searched for their prey. As Buckingham moved through the narrow streets, D'Artagnan's sharp eyes caught the glint of steel in a nearby alley. "Watch out!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the night air. In an instant, he sprang into action, his sword singing as it left its scabbard. The clash of steel on steel rang out, echoing off the ancient stone walls. D'Artagnan's blade danced in the moonlight, a deadly extension of his will as he fought to protect the English lord from the Cardinal's would-be assassins. Sweat beaded on his brow, his muscles burning with exertion as he parried and thrust, his every move a testament to his skill and determination. In another heart-stopping adventure, D'Artagnan and his comrades raced against time to save an innocent nobleman from the hangman's noose. The Cardinal had woven a web of lies, fabricating evidence of treason with the skill of a master manipulator. But D'Artagnan, his mind as sharp as his sword, unraveled the deception thread by thread. In a dramatic confrontation that left the court gasping in disbelief, D'Artagnan exposed the truth. His voice rang out clear and strong, cutting through the lies and deceit like a blade through silk. The courtiers' faces were a sea of shock and awe as the young musketeer's words laid bare the Cardinal's treachery. With each daring exploit, D'Artagnan's reputation grew. He became known as a swordsman of unparalleled skill, a loyal servant of the crown whose name was whispered with both admiration and fear. But such fame came at a price. The young Gascon found himself walking a razor's edge, balancing his duty to the king and queen with the ever-present threat of the Cardinal's vengeance. Powerful enemies emerged from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with malice as they plotted D'Artagnan's downfall. Yet for every foe that arose, the young musketeer found an ally. Influential figures at court, impressed by his courage and integrity, began to rally to his side. As the sun set on another day of intrigue and danger, D'Artagnan stood on the balcony of his modest lodgings, gazing out over the city he had sworn to protect. The cool evening breeze carried the scent of adventure, ruffling his hair and cooling his skin. A small smile played across his lips as he reflected on the path that had led him here. The young Gascon's hand unconsciously moved to the hilt of his sword, the familiar touch grounding him in the present moment. He was no longer just a brash young man seeking glory. He had become a key player in a dangerous game, where the stakes were nothing less than the future of France itself. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, D'Artagnan's keen ears caught the sound of hurried footsteps approaching. His body tensed, ready for action. A breathless messenger appeared, his face flushed with urgency. "Monsieur D'Artagnan," the man gasped, "you're summoned immediately. It's of the utmost importance." D'Artagnan's heart raced as he followed the messenger through the twilight streets. What new challenge awaited him? As they approached the grand induction hall, a buzz of excitement filled the air. Something momentous was about to unfold, and D'Artagnan found himself at the very heart of it. The grand induction hall buzzed with anticipation, a hive of excitement and whispered expectations. D'Artagnan's heart thundered beneath his freshly polished breastplate, each beat a reminder of the journey that had led him to this moment. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching on ornate decorations and casting a golden glow over the assembled crowd. The young Gascon's eyes sought out his friends, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, their faces beaming with pride, a silent testament to the bonds forged in adventure and peril. As the ceremonial sword tapped his shoulders, a surge of emotion threatened to overwhelm D'Artagnan. The cool metal against his skin was a stark contrast to the warmth spreading through his chest. This wasn't just a dream realized, it was the dawn of a new chapter, ripe with possibility and fraught with responsibility. The weight of the blue cloak settling across his shoulders felt like a physical manifestation of his new duties. With characteristic zeal, D'Artagnan threw himself into his role. Each day brought fresh challenges, the clash of steel and thud of boots on packed earth becoming the rhythm of his existence. He trained relentlessly, his blades singing through the air as he honed his skills alongside his comrades. The young musketeer's determination was palpable, his every movement a declaration of his commitment to excel. Word of the young Gascon's prowess spread through the regiment like wildfire, carried on whispers and admiring glances. His exceptional swordsmanship, quick wit, and unwavering courage in the face of danger set him apart. Soon, D'Artagnan's reputation extended beyond the musketeers, earning him admiring looks at court and respectful nods from fellow soldiers. But with rising fame came rising danger. Cardinal Richelieu's cold, calculating gaze followed D'Artagnan's every move. The young musketeer could feel the weight of that stare, like ice trickling down his spine. But he refused to let it deter him. Instead, it fueled his resolve, pushing him to prove himself worthy of the trust placed in him. As D'Artagnan's influence grew, so did the gravity of his assignments. He found himself entrusted with increasingly sensitive and perilous missions. One such task saw him leading a small team of musketeers to uncover a Spanish spy ring operating in the shadowy underbelly of Paris. The city transformed into a labyrinth of secrets and lies. D'Artagnan and his team moved like ghosts through narrow alleys and dimly lit taverns, the cobblestones beneath their feet seeming to whisper conspiracies. Every shadow held potential danger, every casual conversation a possible lead. With each uncovered clue, the net tightened around the traitors. In a heart-stopping confrontation that left D'Artagnan's blood singing with adrenaline, the spy ring was exposed and dismantled, strengthening France's security. But danger lurked closer to home as well. During a royal hunting expedition, the forest air thick with the scent of damp earth and gunpowder, D'Artagnan's keen eyes caught a glint of metal in the underbrush, an assassin's blade poised to strike at the king. Time seemed to slow as instinct took over. In a blur of motion, D'Artagnan sprang into action, his sword flashing in the dappled forest light as he parried the would-be killer's thrust. The clash of steel rang out, startling birds from nearby trees. With a final decisive move, D'Artagnan disarmed the assassin, saving the monarch's life and further cementing his reputation as a loyal protector of the crown. These triumphs propelled D'Artagnan to new heights within the Musketeers. He stood taller, spoke with more authority, and carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had proven his worth. Yet with each step up the ladder of success, the young Gascon felt the rungs beneath him grow increasingly precarious. The world of court politics opened before him like a glittering, treacherous sea. D'Artagnan found himself navigating a complex web of alliances and rivalries, where a misplaced word could be as deadly as a sword thrust. He walked a tightrope, balancing his duties as a musketeer with the personal loyalties and intrigues that defined life in the king's service. As the sun set on another day of triumph and challenge, D'Artagnan stood at his window, gazing out over the rooftops of Paris. The city sprawled before him, a tapestry of shadows and flickering lights, full of promise and peril. He knew that greater challenges and more powerful adversaries lay ahead, but for now he allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. A gentle knock at his door pulled D'Artagnan from his reverie. A messenger stood there, bearing a sealed note. As he broke the wax seal, his eyes widened at the elegant script within. It was an invitation to a gathering at the home of a noblewoman he'd heard whispers about, the enigmatic Milady de Winter. Little did D'Artagnan know that accepting this invitation would plunge him into a web of intrigue far more dangerous than any he had faced before. One that would test not only his skill with a blade, but the very essence of his loyalty and honor. D'Artagnan found himself entangled with the enigmatic Milady de Winter. He was unaware of her true nature or her connection to Cardinal Richelieu. The grand ballroom pulsed with life, a sea of silk and velvet swirling beneath crystal chandeliers. Amidst the crowd, D'Artagnan's breath caught in his throat. There she stood, Milady de Winter, a vision in emerald green that shimmered like moonlight on water. Her raven hair cascaded over porcelain shoulders, and her eyes, deep and mysterious, locked onto his. As if drawn by an invisible thread, D'Artagnan moved towards her. The world around them blurred, faces fading into a haze of candlelight and shadow. Milady's hand, cool and soft, slipped into his as they began to dance. The scent of jasmine enveloped him, intoxicating and sweet. "You dance divinely, Monsieur D'Artagnan," Milady murmured, her voice like honey. "I've heard tales of your bravery." D'Artagnan's heart raced, pride and desire mingling in his chest. "My lady flatters me," he replied, struggling to keep his voice steady. In the days that followed, D'Artagnan found himself consumed by thoughts of Milady. They met in secret, stolen moments filled with whispered promises and longing glances. Each encounter left him more enthralled, more desperate for her approval. "Oh, D'Artagnan," Milady would sigh, her eyes sparkling. "Your adventures are so thrilling. Tell me more about your brave friends, the Musketeers." And D'Artagnan, blinded by her allure, would eagerly share his confidences. He spoke of Athos's quiet strength, Porthos's boisterous charm, and Aramis's quick wit. With each word, Milady's smile grew, a predator savoring the taste of her prey. As twilight painted the Parisian sky in hues of lavender and gold, Milady would return to her chambers. The mask of adoration slipped away, replaced by a triumphant smirk. She reveled in the power she held over the young Gascon, each piece of information carefully stored away for her true master, Cardinal Richelieu. D'Artagnan's friends noticed the change in him. Athos, his brow furrowed with concern, watched as the young man arrived late for their meetings, a dreamy look in his eyes. "Be careful, my friend," Athos warned one evening, his voice low and grave. "Not all that glitters is gold." But D'Artagnan brushed off their concerns, his heart too full of Milady's sweet words to heed their warnings. He walked on air, oblivious to the precipice before him. As their relationship deepened, cracks began to appear in Milady's carefully crafted facade. Her moods shifted like storm clouds, sunshine one moment and thunder the next. D'Artagnan found himself caught in an emotional whirlwind, never sure which Milady he would encounter. "Are you sure your friends truly value you, my dear?" she whispered one night, her breath hot against his ear. Perhaps they see you as nothing more than a country boy playing at being a hero. The words stung, planting seeds of doubt in D'Artagnan's mind. He felt torn, caught between his loyalty to the Musketeers and his growing infatuation with Milady. It was as if he stood on shifting sands, unable to find solid ground. Milady, sensing his inner turmoil, pressed her advantage. She wove a tapestry of lies, each thread designed to unravel the bonds between D'Artagnan and his companions. But to her growing frustration, the young Gascon's loyalty proved stronger than she had anticipated. As the days turned to weeks, Milady's patience began to wear thin. She paced her chambers like a caged tigress, her emerald eyes cold and calculating. D'Artagnan had become a liability, a potential threat to her carefully laid plans. With a heavy heart, Milady came to a chilling conclusion. The man she had once seen as a useful tool now represented a danger that must be eliminated. As she gazed out her window at the bustling streets of Paris, her expression hardened. The game had changed, and she was determined to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. Little did D'Artagnan know that his passionate affair with Milady had set in motion a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of France. As night fell over Paris, the city held its breath, unaware of the storm that was about to break. A frantic knock at his door jolted D'Artagnan from his troubled thoughts. He opened it to find Planchet, his loyal servant, pale and breathless. "Monsieur," Planchet gasped. "Terrible news! The Cardinal's men! They've taken Madame Bonacieux!" D'Artagnan's blood ran cold. Constance, his dear friend and confidant, in the hands of Richelieu? As the implications of this act dawned on him, a sickening realization began to take root. Had his loose tongue, his eagerness to impress Milady, somehow led to this? The young Gascon's world tilted on its axis as he grappled with the possibility that his actions might have endangered those he held most dear. The conflict with Cardinal Richelieu had reached a boiling point. In a calculated move designed to strike at D'Artagnan's heart, the Cardinal's men had kidnapped Constance Bonacieux. Paris, once a city of light and promise, now loomed dark and foreboding. The air hung heavy with the weight of secrets and betrayal, mirroring the suffocating dread that gripped D'Artagnan's heart. As news of Constance's disappearance reached him, his world shattered like glass, each shard a piercing reminder of his failure to protect her. His breath came in ragged gasps, his mind a whirlwind of terrifying possibilities. Without hesitation, he sprang into action, his love for Constance a burning flame that drove him forward. The cobblestone streets echoed with the urgent clatter of his boots as he raced to gather his companions. "She's gone!" D'Artagnan's voice cracked, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. "Constance! They've taken her!" Athos, Porthos, and Aramis exchanged grim looks, the gravity of the situation etched in the lines of their faces. They saw the raw anguish in their young friend's eyes, a pain so palpable it seemed to hang in the air between them. "We stand with you, brother," Athos declared, his hand resting firmly on D'Artagnan's shoulder. "To the end." Together they set out into the labyrinth of Paris, their cloaks billowing behind them like dark wings. The city, once familiar, now seemed alien and hostile. Every shadow held a potential threat, every stranger a possible enemy. The streets twisted and turned, a maze that seemed designed to keep its secrets. They delved into the city's underworld, a place where loyalty was as fleeting as smoke. In dimly lit taverns, the air thick with the stench of cheap wine and desperation, D'Artagnan's keen eyes darted from face to face. He searched for any flicker of recognition, any telltale sign of guilt that might lead him to Constance. Each dead end felt like a physical blow. False leads and bribed officials blocked their path at every turn, a testament to the Cardinal's far-reaching influence. D'Artagnan's determination wavered like a candle in the wind, but never extinguished. The image of Constance, her kind eyes and gentle smile, fueled him onward. In abandoned warehouses, where rats scurried in the shadows, they uncovered a network of the Cardinal's spies. D'Artagnan's heart pounded in his chest as they infiltrated these hideouts, his hand never far from his sword. The constant tension wore on him, etching lines of worry on his young face. As days stretched into weeks, D'Artagnan's concern for Constance grew like a thorny vine around his heart, choking out all other thoughts. His once bright eyes now held a haunted look, dark circles beneath them, testament to sleepless nights spent in fruitless search. It was during one such restless night that D'Artagnan stumbled upon a revelation that shook him to his core. In a forgotten alley, he overheard a whispered conversation that made his blood run cold. Constance's abduction was not merely an act of cruelty aimed at him, but part of a larger, more sinister plot against the queen. The young musketeer found himself caught in a web of intrigue that stretched far beyond his personal concerns. Constance, it seemed, may have been privy to sensitive information about the Queen's correspondence with Buckingham. This knowledge made her a valuable pawn in the Cardinal's grand chess game of power and influence. D'Artagnan's mind reeled, torn between his duty to the crown and his burning desire to rescue the woman he loved. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on him like a physical burden, each step forward feeling like a choice between two impossible paths. As the search continued, Paris transformed before D'Artagnan's eyes. The once bustling markets now seemed sinister, every transaction potentially a coded message between enemy agents. The tolling of church bells, once a comforting sound, now marked the passing of precious time, time that Constance might not have. D'Artagnan's actions grew increasingly desperate and dangerous. He scaled walls in the dead of night, the rough stones scraping his palms raw. He eavesdropped on conversations in dimly lit alleys, his heart pounding so loudly he feared it would give him away. He confronted dangerous individuals, each encounter a dance on the knife's edge between gaining information and losing his life. His fellow musketeers watched with a mixture of admiration and concern. They stood by him, their bond of brotherhood stronger than ever in the face of this challenge. Yet they couldn't help but wonder how far their young friend would go in his quest to find Constance, and what toll this ordeal would take on his spirit. As D'Artagnan pushed himself to the brink of exhaustion, a new lead emerged. A cryptic message delivered by a hooded figure in the dead of night hinted at a connection between Constance's disappearance and a woman known as Milady de Winter. The name stirred something in D'Artagnan's memory, a vague recollection of danger and deceit. With renewed vigor, D'Artagnan set out to uncover the truth about this mysterious Milady. Little did he know that the path he was about to embark upon would lead him to a truth far more shocking than he could have ever imagined. A truth that would shatter his world once again and test the very foundations of his loyalty and friendship. D'Artagnan's world crumbled as he uncovered the shocking truth about Milady de Winter's past. The revelation of her previous marriage to Athos and the criminal brand that marked her as a convicted felon shattered everything he thought he knew. The Parisian air hung heavy with secrets, the city's usual bustle muted, as if holding its breath. D'Artagnan wandered the cobblestone streets, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and betrayal. The weight of this new knowledge pressed down on him, making each step feel like a battle against an invisible force. It all began with a chance encounter that would change everything. Lord de Winter, Milady's brother-in-law, appeared in Paris like a specter from her past. His eyes filled with a mix of recognition and dread, locked onto D'Artagnan's bewildered gaze. "You must know the truth," Lord de Winter said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet it echoed in D'Artagnan's ears like a thunderclap. "She is not who she claims to be." As Lord de Winter's words poured forth, painting a picture of deceit and murder, D'Artagnan felt the ground shift beneath his feet. The woman he thought he knew, the one who had captured his heart, was nothing but a carefully crafted illusion. Each revelation was a dagger to his heart, twisting deeper with every word. Reeling from this newfound knowledge, D'Artagnan sought out Athos, his friend and mentor. The tavern was dim, the air thick with smoke and unspoken truths. Athos sat hunched over his wine, his eyes distant and haunted, as if gazing into a past he'd rather forget. "Tell me," D'Artagnan pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. "Tell me everything." And so, like water breaking through a dam, Athos's story flowed. He spoke of a love so pure it blinded him, of a young woman whose beauty was matched only by her cunning. His words painted a vivid picture of their wedding night, joy turning to ash as he discovered the brand that marked her as a thief. "I was mad with grief and rage," Athos confessed, his voice barely audible over the tavern's ambient noise. I I tried to kill her, hanged her from a tree, but somehow she survived. The weight of this revelation pressed down on D'Artagnan like a physical force. Every moment, every touch, every whispered word between him and Milady now felt tainted, poisoned by lies. He saw her machinations for what they were, a spider's web, with him the unwitting fly. As the truth settled in his bones, D'Artagnan felt a change come over him. The naive young man who had arrived in Paris, full of dreams and ambition, was gone, replaced by someone harder, wiser, and infinitely more cautious. The city itself seemed to mirror his transformation, its once welcoming streets now fraught with hidden dangers. But while D'Artagnan grappled with his new reality, Milady was not idle. Like a cornered animal, she lashed out, her beauty and charm now weapons honed to a deadly edge. Her eyes, once warm with false affection, now burned with a cold fury that sent chills down D'Artagnan's spine. She moved through the shadows of Paris like a vengeful spirit, her every step calculated to bring ruin to those who had exposed her. And at the top of her list was D'Artagnan, the man who had dared to see behind her mask. But it was Constance who bore the brunt of Milady's wrath. Sweet, innocent Constance, whose only crime was to love D'Artagnan truly. In a moment that would haunt D'Artagnan for the rest of his days, Milady struck. The news of Constance's murder hit D'Artagnan like a physical blow. He fell to his knees on the cold, unforgiving cobblestones, a cry of anguish tearing from his throat. The world seemed to lose its color, everything fading to shades of gray in the wake of his loss. The bustling city fell silent around him, as if Paris itself mourned alongside him. As he knelt there, surrounded by the remnants of his shattered heart, something within D'Artagnan changed. The love he had once felt for Milady twisted and warped, transforming into a burning desire for justice. His eyes, once soft with affection, now hardened with resolve. In that moment, as the last echoes of his grief faded into the Parisian night, D'Artagnan made a silent vow. He would see Milady brought to justice, no matter the cost. The stage was set for a final, fateful confrontation, and D'Artagnan would not rest until it was done. As dawn broke over the city, casting long shadows across the streets, D'Artagnan rose to his feet. His hand instinctively went to the hilt of his sword, feeling its reassuring weight. He turned toward the rising sun, his face set with grim determination. In the distance, he could make out the silhouettes of his fellow musketeers, gathering to stand with him. Among them, a new figure emerged. Lord de Winter, his eyes burning with the same resolve. The hunt for Milady was about to begin, and Paris would never be the same. The Musketeers and their allies stood united in their quest for justice against Milady. Lord de Winter joined their ranks, his resolve as firm as theirs in bringing the notorious criminal to account for her numerous misdeeds. The pursuit led them to a tranquil convent, its weathered stone walls a silent sentinel against the encroaching darkness. A cool breeze whispered through the surrounding trees, carrying with it the faint scent of incense and candle wax. Milady, ever the master of disguise, had sought refuge within, cloaking herself in the humble garb of a nun. Athos's jaw clenched, his eyes hardening at the irony of her chosen sanctuary. The weight of their shared past hung heavy on his shoulders. Each step towards the convent, a battle against memories both sweet and bitter. With the precision of seasoned hunters, the group encircled the convent. Every shadowy alcove, every potential escape route was covered. The air grew thick with anticipation, the silence broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the soft clink of weaponry. D'Artagnan, his young face set with determination, felt his heart racing. His hand instinctively tightened on the hilt of his sword, the cool metal a stark contrast to his sweating palm. The memory of Constance, her life cut short by Milady's machinations, fueled his resolve. When finally cornered, Milady's transformation was chilling to behold. Gone was the facade of piety, replaced by a creature of cold calculation. Her eyes, once warm and inviting, now glittered like shards of ice. She wielded her charm like a finely honed dagger, her honeyed words a desperate attempt to find weakness among her captors. "Gentlemen," she purred, her voice a silken caress, "surely there's been some misunderstanding. I am but a humble servant of God." But the musketeer stood firm, their hearts hardened against her pleas. The ghosts of her victims seemed to whisper in the air around them, a chorus of silent accusation. The makeshift trial that followed was a somber affair. The room they chose seemed to absorb the weight of the crimes being recounted, the air growing heavier with each damning testimony. Athos stepped forward, his face a mask of pain and resolve. His voice, usually strong and commanding, wavered as he recounted the tragic tale of their marriage. "I loved her," he said, his words barely above a whisper, "and she repaid that love with betrayal and death." Lord de Winter's testimony followed, a study in controlled fury. His words painted a vivid picture of Milady's involvement in his brother's demise, each sentence another nail in the coffin of her fate. When D'Artagnan spoke, it was with a maturity beyond his years. He told of Milady's role in Constance's murder, his voice thick with emotion. "She snuffed out a light in this world," he said, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, "a light that can never be rekindled." As the trial progressed, the full scope of Milady's crimes unfolded like a tapestry of darkness. Theft, espionage, and murder were woven into its fabric, each thread more damning than the last. The poisoning of her second husband stood out as a particularly chilling act, a testament to her ruthlessness. Throughout the proceedings, Milady remained defiant. Her eyes darted from face to face, searching for a weakness, a chink in the armor of justice that surrounded her. But her charm, once so potent, now fell flat against the wall of evidence that towered before her. The verdict was inevitable. Guilty on all counts, with death as the sentence. A fitting end for one who had brought death to so many. The execution was set to take place on the banks of the Lys River. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Milady was led to her fate. The beauty of the morning stood in stark contrast to the grim task at hand. A mysterious headsman awaited, his face hidden beneath a dark hood. The air was heavy with unspoken emotions as Milady faced her executioners. Even in her final moments, her spirit remained unbroken. She hurled curses at those gathered, her words sharp as daggers, seeking to wound one last time. As the blade fell, a collective shudder passed through the witnesses. Justice had been served, but the cost weighed heavily on their souls. The revelation that the headsman was Gramont, Athos's loyal servant, added a final, poignant note to the proceedings. In the aftermath, a somber atmosphere settled over the Musketeers. Athos, in particular, seemed lost in thought. The ghosts of his past finally laid to rest, but leaving behind a hollow ache. The execution of Milady marked the end of a dark chapter in their lives, a chapter written in blood and betrayal. As they turned away from the river, each lost in their own reflections, the Musketeers were acutely aware of the high price of their adventures. The complex moral landscape they navigated had exacted its toll, leaving them changed men. Just as they prepared to depart, a messenger arrived, breathless and wide-eyed. "The Cardinal demands your presence," he gasped. Immediately, the Musketeers exchanged wary glances. What new challenge awaited them in the halls of power? With heavy hearts and weary bodies, they set off for the Cardinal's chambers, the taste of victory turning bitter in their mouths. The air in the Cardinal's opulent chambers crackled with tension. D'Artagnan and his companions strode in, their boots echoing on the polished marble floor. The room seemed to hold its breath, heavy tapestries muffling the sounds of Paris beyond the thick stone walls. Richelieu, a figure as imposing as he was cunning, sat behind his massive oak desk, his crimson robes a stark contrast to the pale marble surrounding him. As the Musketeers approached, the Cardinal's piercing gaze swept over them, lingering on the thick folder clutched in D'Artagnan's hand. The young Gascon felt his palms grow damp, but he steeled himself, drawing strength from the presence of his friends at his back. "To what do I owe this? Pleasure, gentlemen?" Richelieu's silky voice sliced through the silence, belying the steel in his eyes. D'Artagnan stepped forward, his heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. "Your Eminence," he said, his voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in his stomach, "we come bearing truce you may find inconvenient." With a soft thud that seemed to echo through the room, he placed the dossier on the Cardinal's ornate desk. The air grew thick with anticipation as Richelieu leafed through the documents. His face remained impassive, a mask of practiced indifference, but the tightening of his jaw betrayed his growing unease. The Musketeers watched, tense as bowstrings, as the Cardinal absorbed the extent of their knowledge. His role in the Diamond Studs affair, his use of Milady as an agent, and countless other schemes that threatened the very foundation of the crown. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The only sound in the room was the soft rustle of papers and the barely audible intake of breath from the Musketeers. Finally, Richelieu looked up, his eyes glittering like shards of ice in the fading afternoon light. "Impressive," he murmured, his tone a mixture of anger and grudging respect. "And what do you intend to do with this? Information?" Athos stepped forward, his hand resting casually on the hilt of his sword. His voice was low and dangerous, carrying the weight of unspoken threats. "That depends on you, Your Eminence." A smile, sharp as a blade, curved Richelieu's lips. "Come now, gentlemen. Surely we can reach an arrangement that benefits us all?" The Cardinal's offer hung in the air like smoke, tempting and potentially toxic. He proposed valuable commissions for the Musketeers, his keen mind already working to turn this setback into an advantage. But it was to D'Artagnan that he extended the most tantalizing offer: a promotion to lieutenant in the Musketeers. D'Artagnan's breath caught in his throat. The position he had dreamed of since he first set foot in Paris, now within his grasp. He glanced at his friends, their faces a mixture of pride and concern. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, as heavy as the armor he wore. "Consider carefully, my young friend," Aramis murmured, his eyes wise and knowing. "Power can be a double-edged sword." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the chamber in hues of gold and crimson, D'Artagnan made his decision. He accepted the promotion, his mind already racing with the possibilities it presented. To serve the king, to protect France, and to keep a watchful eye on the Cardinal's future machinations. With the confrontation resolved, a bittersweet mood settled over the Musketeers. Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, their bodies bearing the scars of countless adventures, announced their decision to retire. The news hit D'Artagnan like a physical blow, even as he understood their reasons. Athos, his mentor and friend, spoke of retreating to his family estate. "I've had my fill of intrigue and battle," he said, a rare smile softening his features. "It's time for quieter pursuits." Porthos, ever the lover of life's finer things, grinned broadly as he announced his impending marriage to a wealthy widow. "A life of luxury awaits, my friends," he boomed, his laughter filling the room and chasing away some of the melancholy. And Aramis, his eyes shining with a long-held passion, revealed his intention to enter a monastery. "The call of faith has grown too strong to ignore," he said softly, clasping each of his friends' hands in turn. As twilight deepened into night, D'Artagnan found himself standing alone in the courtyard of the Musketeers' headquarters. The stones beneath his feet still held the day's warmth, a comforting contrast to the cool night air. The weight of his new responsibilities settled on his shoulders, but alongside it was a sense of excitement for the challenges that lay ahead. He gazed up at the stars, twinkling like scattered diamonds in the velvet sky, and felt a surge of gratitude for the remarkable journey that had brought him here. The scent of leather and steel, so familiar now, filled his nostrils, grounding him in the present even as his mind raced toward the future. From a young Gascon dreamer to a lieutenant of the King's Musketeers, D'Artagnan had come far. The path had been fraught with danger, filled with sword fights and intrigues, laughter and tears. As he turned to face his future, he carried with him the unbreakable bonds of friendship and the invaluable lessons learned along the way. The cool night breeze ruffled his hair, carrying with it the promise of new adventures. Whatever challenges awaited, D'Artagnan knew he was ready to face them. Not just as a musketeer, but as a true hero of France, forged in the fires of loyalty, courage, and friendship. With a deep breath, he squared his shoulders and strode back into the headquarters. The chapter of his life as a young, impetuous recruit had closed. Now a new one was beginning, one where he would write his own legend, guided by the wisdom of his friends and the fire of his own indomitable spirit. As the door closed behind him, the stars continued their silent vigil over Paris, witnesses to the end of one great adventure and the beginning of another.
This book was generated using Speakter's AI voices. You can create human-like voiceovers in over 50 languages.